It's election night in California. I'm your host, Brian Anderson. So we're here with the latest results as of 10 p.m. here in California Pacific Standard Time. So first, here are the candidates. We have former Vice President Joe Biden, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. So let's take a look at the state of the race right now. So nothing's changed in Texas and nothing's changed in Maine. We still don't know how those races are going to be called on Super Tuesday. But so far we know Joe Biden has won 8 states, and we know Bernie Sanders has won 4 states. As you can see right here, California has been called at 8:02 p.m., and it went for Bernie Sanders, and that was called by the Associated Press. The Sacramento Bee follows that recommendation, so we have a full story on our website at sacbee.com explaining the result, what it means, and how Sanders was able to emerge victorious here in the state. So latest results. He's at 29%, Bloomberg 18.7, Biden 17.5, Warren below the 15% threshold. And as you can see, there are a lot of candidates, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Tom Steyer, and Andrew Yang, who got a sizable share of the vote, even though they've recently dropped out. So what comes next here in California? Between now and April 3rd, counties are going to be counting all of these votes. And we won't know how many votes are outstanding until this Friday when the counties report the number of unprocessed ballots. So expect weeks-long time to get some of these results trickling in. But here's some key numbers for you. 15%. This is what's needed for a candidate to get one of the 415 pledged delegates here in the state. As we mentioned earlier, about 2/3 of those are awarded at the congressional level, and the remaining third or so come from the statewide count. CD 40, this is an important congressional district for Bernie Sanders, and I wanted to take a quick look at it with you here. This is Congressional District 40, and as you can see, Biden, Bloomberg around 18.3% and 14.2%, but Bernie Sanders has a whopping 47.7% of the vote. So why is this important? This is the district that has the largest share of young voters and Latino voters here in California, which are really the core demographics for Sanders' campaign. And it looks like he's having a really great night in that 40th congressional district. Another key thing that is worth mentioning is that we have local races here as well. So I just want to pull up a couple quick ones for you. This one is Assembly District 73. And this race is between Bill Breaux and Lori Davies. The important thing about Assemblyman Bill Breaux, this is an Orange County race. And Orange County swung for House Democrats back in 2018 during the so-called blue wave. So this is a place where some Republicans are vulnerable, and Democrats could potentially see pickup opportunities and expand on their supermajority in the California legislature. Now, Bill Breaux was credibly accused of unwanted sexual advances and for possible campaign misspending, which is both under investigation. The party has since refused to endorse him, the Orange County GOP, and it's a tight race right now. Breaux has 20.2% of the vote, and a Democrat has 19.2% of the vote as well. And you can see that these results keep coming in and can be quickly changing, but still 29% for the leader, Janet Nguyen, in that race. For Lori Davies in that race, Assembly District 73. Which takes me to Assembly District 72 with Tyler Deep and Janet Nguyen. Now, Tyler Deep is a moderate Republican in Orange County who is vulnerable from a challenge on the right. Why is that? Because Tyler Deep, he supported Assembly Bill 5, which was the gig workers bill, and that's something that we have more information on at sacbee.com if you want to research that bill and see what it did and what it's doing. It's gotten some pushback from people on the further right side of the Republican Party. One other race that I have to note is at the congressional level. There's a lot of interest in Katie Hill, who is in Assembly District 25, Congressional District 25, and Katie Hill left her seat after being accused of some inappropriate sexual behavior with a staff member, which is still a topic of conversation. So once Katie Hill left that seat, that created a vacancy. And right now, it looks like Christy Smith, the Democrat, will emerge as the Democratic frontrunner. But on the Republican side, Mike Garcia is edging out Steve Knight. Steve Knight is a former congressional representative himself. So if Steve Knight doesn't crack that top 2, he won't advance to the general election in March. So those are some of the key local races. We've talked about the national picture, but let's dive deeper with a man who has a number of opinions. Unfortunately, he likes the Giants, but we'll get into that. Marcos Bretón, thanks for coming here.
Buddy, thank you.
So let's go to your takeaways so far.
So from California, it's interesting that Michael Bloomberg has done as well as he's done, and if he had done better in other states, that his showing in California would be more significant. However, as we know, he did not do well in other states. He didn't do well any place but American Samoa, which is great, but it's not going to get you a whole lot of delegates. So before Mr. Bloomberg signed off for the evening, he stated that he was going to reassess his candidacy tomorrow. And I think both of us know that when a politician ends the evening by saying he's going to reassess, that's a pretty good indicator that he's not going to be around very much longer.
And I mean, you can take a look at this map here in California. You could see, or here across the country, not one state went for Bloomberg. They're all Biden or Bernie Sanders. And this is a critical thing in California, though. Bloomberg is still at 18.7%, which is above Biden. Things can change. It's a very fluid situation. But does that surprise you that Bloomberg's ahead of Biden here in this early vote count?
Well, yes and no. It doesn't in the sense that Biden did not have much of a presence in California. Biden's play was elsewhere. Bloomberg did spend an awful lot of money. He had an awful lot of money to spend. So we're still diving into the numbers. Obviously, we still don't know a lot of the numbers. Obviously, it's not a surprise that Bernie Sanders is at the top. He should be at the top. But he also put more into California, far more than anybody else. So
I've got to ask, like, 2016, you have this historical context as well, and Sanders was really upset after losing to Hillary Clinton here in 2016. And what have we seen since? We've seen more than 20 field offices here in California. Right. We've seen 105 paid staff members, and that's more than any other operation in the state, with the exception of Mike Bloomberg. So, how do you think Sanders, I should say, was able to take this state?
So, I mean, he put more into it than any other candidate. And I think obviously the numbers still could change somewhat. His numbers still could go up, but if these numbers hold, it is a convincing win considering the number of candidates. But you wonder if it's convincing enough, since his ground operation was much larger than every other candidate except for Bloomberg, and even then Bloomberg came into the race very late. And given what's happened with Sanders in other states, again, I think while I'm sure he's gratified by this, it's certainly not the evening I think that they were hoping for, and it's certainly an evening that is much more successful for Joe Biden than either Joe Biden or Mr. Sanders had anticipated. So,
were you expecting Biden to do this well? He's claimed 8 states so far, and there's still 2 states that are outstanding.
I mean, considering that several of those states he didn't have one campaign appearance, it signals a shift in the tide that I think we're going to, not to overuse the word, we're going to be unpacking for several weeks to come. In that, a couple of weeks ago, after New Hampshire, I'm not going to say that Biden looked dead, but he certainly didn't look good.
And then South Carolina happens. But I want to get to one thing that stands out in my mind here in California, and that's just like this bump up from June to March, and this notion that California would be a part of this narrative. And the race was called right after 8 o'clock, and right now as we speak, Texas is a closely contested state, and that's dominating the discussion. Do you think California is really getting its due as we're talking about this?
I don't because of all the things that have happened since South Carolina and before the polls closed in California. When Biden can win in a state like Oklahoma, where Sanders won big 4 years ago, where he can win in Arkansas, where he didn't appear one time, it speaks to a larger story that, unfortunately, a larger story about Biden and Democratic voters that kind of steals the spotlight from California in the sense, because I'm not going to say that California doesn't play an important role. It does, but given what's happened since South Carolina, there's a bigger story in politics right now besides the fact that our state moved up to March.
One novelty about California, early voting starts February 3rd, and they've enacted more and more policies in the state. One thing, motor voter,
Right.
and that makes it so people can automatically register to vote at the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles here in California, which has led to a rise in no-party preference voters, which are now the second largest voting bloc in the state. And I remember there's 20 Democrats on this presidential ballot.
Yes.
Half of them dropped out before Election Day,
Right.
including Buttigieg above
Yes.
10, Klobuchar
Yes.
at 5, Steyer at 4, Yang at 1.4. Do you feel like there's going to be some changes that come out of this process?
There have to be changes, and I think that this year emphasized how starting with Iowa and New Hampshire is really a loser for the Democratic Party, and really.
Why so?
In the sense that their caucuses and their demographics of those states do not mirror either the party or the nation. And so why not start with California right out of the gate? Or why not start with South Carolina or Nevada, or a state where you have a primary and not a caucus, which is more democratic, and where you have a voting bloc that is more reflective of the Democratic Party and the nation as a whole.
And I want to remind our people that we have had multiple shows today, so in case they've missed them, we had one at 6, one at 8:30, and this is streaming on YouTube. It's also on our website, sacbee.com. A lot more to come. What's one prediction you have going forward that Californians should keep an eye out for?
Well, I think no matter what happens, it's going to be really interesting to see how the Latino vote broke down for this race. And the initial word that we're hearing is that obviously Senator Sanders carried the vote, but I'm really interested to see splits between young and old, and how that voting bloc is going to feel if like in a week or two, if Mr. Biden has opened up a huge lead, and whether he's able to claim a very important vote in California for himself later in the general.
Yeah, and I talked to Sanders' campaign and Biden's campaign today, and obviously Biden's team is very happy with the outcome of Super Tuesday. Sanders' team thinks that you can take California to other states. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I mean, they have to say that, right? I mean, I don't think that they expected Biden to do as well as he has. And then we're going to go into some more southern states and Midwestern states where Biden seems like he's going to have an edge. And so, another, not a prediction, but a wonder for me is, we've been operating on the principle that it's going to be a broker convention. Is that going to change now, given how well Biden has done and whether that momentum carries over? And particularly if Bloomberg and Elizabeth Warren drop out and it becomes a two-man race, and the differences become more magnified, whether we'll end up having a broker convention or whether it gets settled before that.
In the words of President Trump, we'll have to wait and see, folks.
We'll have to wait and see, folks. We'll have to wait and see.
And just a reminder, sacbee.com is the go-to source for everything you need about California 2020 presidential primary election, but also these key local races. We have some terrific coverage there as well for you. So make sure you check up everything, sacbee.com. We want to thank Marcos Bretón for coming on. Thank you, Marcos. It's great having you.
Thank you very much.
And
my pleasure.
On behalf of everyone at the Sacramento Bee, our video director, Kamaria Roberts, our producer, Alyssa Hoddenfield, and all of our guests here today, including Alan Warren, City Council member, and Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg. I'm Brian Anderson signing off. Thank you so much for tuning in.